Hey there, I'm Greg Nicotero.
Hi, my name is Coleman Domingo.
Hi, I'm Benai Garcia.
Hi, I am Mo Collins.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik, Igrihe, and Ryan.
And this is episode 106 of the Cinik Radio Podcast, and I'm your host and the resident giant breast milk enthusiast, Cinik. Joining me as always, my co-host, and just a pack of domesticated wildlings, Igrihe, Ryan, and Kim. And we're here to break down Season 8, Episode 2 of Game of Thrones, entitled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Winter is at the gate, so don't forget to smash that like button and smash that subscribe button. And if you're a total YouTube addict like I am, go ahead and hit that notification bell as well for all the latest happenings in Westeros every week here on the Cinik Radio Podcast. Let's start the show. We open the episode more awkwardly than we did last week as Jaime is hauled in front of the principal's office to answer for his past transgressions and reminisce about the good old days. Like, hey, remember when you took that oath to protect my father and then you stabbed him directly in the back? IG, we both live under a mantra of always being accountable for our mistakes. And Jaime seems like he's done that in spades just by showing up to face the music. But could you sit silently like he did while the Khaleesi lobbed threats his way? Like, yeah, I killed your father, but what about the fact that he was going to nuke the whole city with hundreds of thousands of people in it? And if he gave his reasoning, would it have mattered?
You know, it's those times when you got to really think about what you're saying and read the room, as it said. Because Khaleesi was just on a tear. Daenerys did not care what he had to say. She was just going on her, we had bedtime stories about what an awful man you were. She hasn't been around to see everything he's been through since he gave Bran a little love tap out the window. He's kind of a changed man, and to his credit, he stood there and took the browbeating like the changed man that he is. It would have made no difference. It would have done nothing better for him to tell her exactly what's going on. And so I really commend him for standing there saying, yeah, I would have done it because I was defending my family and everything went the way it should have, but I'm different now. And he didn't have to tell people he's different. Somebody else did it for him. And I thought that was pretty well done, pretty well written, actually.
Yeah, Jaime was definitely making a compelling argument for his behavior until Bran spoke up and spoke those fateful words, those just haunting words, the things I do for love. In that moment, Jaime was shook, and he knew that Bran, much like the North, definitely remembers. Ryan, he's facing a vote of no confidence from Dany and Sansa, and to quote the movie Snatch, the Kingslayer looked like he was proper fucked, until Lady Bran spoke up on his behalf. Is there anyone more genuine or qualified in the Seven Kingdoms that you'd want to speak on the depth of your honor and your character than her?
I've read somewhere or heard somebody talking, and it's true that she is the only fully honest and good person on the show. I mean, I guess you can maybe make an argument, for Jon Snow, but her word is gold. And I think she's as honorable a person, and I think Sansa kind of had it right. If she can vouch for him, then he's okay. He's had this insane redemptive arc. I think one of the great redemptive arcs on TV, really, coming from the Kingslayer and the character who early season 2, I think we all wanted him dead, to being what he is now is nothing short of amazing. He's become such a sympathetic character that it's hard to imagine that he was so kind of reviled at some point not too long ago.
IG, if you remember back to the trial of who killed Joffrey, Jaime went and politicked with his father in private, but he never stuck up for Tyrion the way Tyrion did for him in front of everybody, even though he knew he was already in the jackpot for Cersei's lies. Do you think that Tyrion's love of his family might be his Achilles heel?
I don't know about total love for his family, but he really does love his brother, Jaime. And to be fair, out of everyone in his family, the only one that was ever even remotely kind to him was Jaime. Cersei was outwardly mean to Tyrion at every turn, every chance she got, and so was Tywin. So if anybody is going to be there for Jaime, it's going to be Tyrion, because he was the only one that showed him any humanity or treated him like he was a real person. Didn't treat him like he was a joke or a sideshow thing or just a mutant that killed their mother. It's really kind of endearing how much Jaime actually cares for Tyrion, and it does show that they have a very strong, caring relationship for each other. And that's one thing this show really does show very well, is the relationships that form between each other seem very genuine. They're written very well and acted just beautifully.
Kim, our master of details, did you notice the exchange between Grey Worm and Jaime as he handed/jammed his sword back into his chest pretty much as hard as he could?
I think that there was a brief look exchange between Grey Worm and Daenerys, and I don't think there's a general consensus that everybody trusts Jaime yet. There's been a lot of back and forth, and is he on our side? Is he not? And when Grey Worm looked at Daenerys and kind of got that brief look of doubt in her eyes and realized that, nobody else in the room was really kind of on her side, he's hedging his bets. He's paying attention, like he's trying to send a subtle message to him, like, I'm paying attention to you, I've got her back. And I think that's kind of what it was with the shove of the sword into the chest, like, kind of don't fuck with her.
Yeah, and as the meeting kind of let out, everybody went their separate ways, and you could tell that Daenerys was pissed. Like, have you ever made your parents mad in a store or at a restaurant, and that you're in for it as soon as you leave that place? Like, they're furious, but they're not going to let anybody see till they get you outside. And that's exactly what happened to Tyrion. She reads him the riot act about falling for Cersei's deception, about the sending of the reinforcements, and even goes as far as threatening his position. But Kim, didn't everybody fall for Cersei's lies? And I mean, how is this on the imp? And does it seem like being the hand of the king or the queen is absolutely the worst job in Westeros?
Almost a death sentence. I think everyone at some point in time has kind of fallen for it. Maybe they wanted to believe in the stories that she was telling. Maybe they hope that she was kind of, getting her act together, so to speak, obviously before she went full on batshit crazy. I think Tyrion's want for his family to not be ripped apart is so strong that he's just biting for, that approval from each independent member. And I think he's tried pretty hard to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And in the beginning, he was more take it or leave it, kind of had a chip on his shoulder, kind of had an attitude. And like Ryan was saying last week about the character not being written well now, I think it kind of plays back to that, because then he had a whole lot to say, and for a little guy, he was surely getting his point across, and now all of a sudden it's, I think he's more or less disappointed with himself that he allowed himself to fall into that trap again.
Exactly. And Ryan, would you rather be a logger or a cab driver in the Bronx or a hand of the king or queen at this point? I mean, because the fatality rate, as far as I know, the only person to survive that so far is Davos, because he was Stannis' hand, and he somehow outlived Stannis.
It's not a good position if you want any long-term life stability, I guess. It'll be interesting to see what goes on. I think as we talk more about the episode, I was heartened and encouraged by how Tyrion was written this episode, or more that it seemed a little bit of a return to form as far as the dialogue and who he was. So maybe it was intentional, and to some extent. I do think that there's this clear kind of humbling of Tyrion over this last couple seasons, and I think he, for a long time, has been the cleverest man in Westeros, and so he's had a couple of setbacks. And I think whether or not there's kind of a deep-seated desire to protect or save his family, I don't think it consciously kind of finds its way into his decision making. But I think part of the issue with him is he always thinks he's a step ahead of people, and I think especially Cersei. I think everybody underestimates Cersei, and for a lot of times, it's deserved. She's often not been the smartest character on the show. But, I think that sometimes he's a victim of his own kind of success and of his own intelligence. And so I think this is just a situation where he just completely underestimated her. I think he thought he had backed her into a corner. He thought he had manipulated her. She hasn't changed. And so hopefully there is kind of a redemptive arc where Tyrion does kind of return to form. But I guess it remains to be seen. So now I'm encouraged and hopeful that maybe Tyrion will become, the Tyrion we all kind of know and love.
Listen, you can't turn your back on Cersei. Other than not dealing with the High Sparrow in a more immediate fashion, she's outplayed a lot of people in this game. She's responsible for wiping the Tyrells off the fucking map in one swoop. She is definitely a contender to come out on top of this thing if they can somehow deal with the threat to the north, especially now that she has some hired guns behind her. But she's dangerous. She's probably the most dangerous person in Westeros other than our friend Arya. And we jump down to the blacksmith where Arya is checking on her weapons from Gendry, and she shows her hands a little bit about how dangerous she is, which impresses the bull. IG, being as dangerous as Arya is, she's probably the greatest killer in the Seven Kingdoms at this point, or at least has the ability to be. But do you think going into this battle, she might be a little too cocky, or is the faceless assassin that good?
Well, I think that she suffers from she doesn't know what the hell she's messing with. But I think there is a little bit of she is that good to go along with it. I think she's going to be okay. I strangely have this feeling that if anyone is going to come out of this less harmed than anyone else, it's going to be Arya. I don't know. I'm starting to come up with a little bit of a theory that I think Arya might be the one sitting on the throne when all this is said and done. She might be the only one left. She is shown to be a survivor one way or another. She's going to come out of things. And I love that about her. She's a psychopath. She's crazy. And maybe she's going to be the mad queen afterwards because she's just going to kill somebody if they really wrong her. And then she'll put their face on and dance around. It's kind of a good time. And I can't blame her. Like, she's been through some stuff. Not as much as Sansa, but she's been through some stuff herself.
I really do want to see Arya in some one-on-one combat against a foe other than Brienne in the sparring yard. I want to see her take some people out, and I would love if the series even ended with her standing over top of Cersei's corpse, just smiling down at her. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I don't know if we're going to get that far. I mean, there were some previews where she's running around the crypts, and she looked pretty scared shitless. So I don't know where it's going. I don't have any spoilers, but let's just hope she makes it through. We spoke last week, Ryan, about this jockeying for position and title, which means nothing in the face of death. Is the three-eyed raven the only one that gets it? As far as Jaime goes, because he goes out to find him in the yard, is forgiveness necessary when a terrible act sets you on a more advantageous path like it has Jaime and Bran?
I guess it's like kind of the philosophical question, right? Like, is the bad action okay because it resulted in something that's positive for the realm, or, is the action in and of itself still wrong? Jaime has largely redeemed himself. I don't know that you ever completely redeem yourself, from trying to murder a kid, but to the extent that you can, I think he has. And yeah, I think Bran is the only person that seems, although even Bran kind of can get a little petty, it seems, or the three-eyed raven when he needs to. But I think that, he sees clearly what's happening and what's going on and where they're headed, and that they need to deal with that battle. And so, he kind of made it clear himself that, that it's unimportant what he did to Bran. Maybe Jaime has to deal with it at some point in the future. Maybe he doesn't. But clearly, Bran seems to be the key to all of this, on both as far as knowledge and also as far as the Night King's own kind of motivations.
IG, put yourself in Jaime's shoes. I mean, you see this kid that you tossed out of a tower and somehow lived, and now he's all weirded out. I mean, how do you say sorry? Do you do it with some hoodie-footy pajamas, maybe some Sherry's Berries, like an edible arrangement? How do you go about making it up to this kid? Because he's never getting use of his legs again.
There's no way to make that right. I think Bran's right, where he's like, he's not mad at anybody, and he's certainly not mad at Jaime anymore, because, again, without that push, he would still just be Brandon Stark. There would be no three-eyed raven. They would not have any method or prayer to be anywhere prepared for what's coming. At least with the three-eyed raven now, with what Brandon Stark has become, they have a chance. There's a way to survive all of this. Without the simple what we do for love out the window, they're all dead. So really, shouldn't everybody be thanking Jaime for pushing him out the window? I mean, it's a little cold-hearted, but that's kind of what's going on. Everybody should be going, hey, thank you.
We get a little bit of foreshadowing between Brienne and Jaime as he finds her and pledges to fight for her under her command. But that's only after she asks, why haven't you insulted me yet? Kim, these two are a big part of the heart and soul of this episode. But like most relationships, they're pretty complex. What do you get the sense that these two really feel about each other? And in a different world, do you think they could have been a couple?
I think they both care a lot about each other, actually, but I don't think that either one of them really fully can commit to saying anything about it right now. It's not the right time. We're all about to die, possibly. I think that there's chemistry there and that there's a lot of loyalty. And I think that's something that obviously Jamie hasn't gotten from his sister. It was a really cute exchange between the two of them. And I think, honestly, I think when they were talking and they're standing there and they're watching all these warriors training for battle, Jamie said something to the effect of, "Oh, he's come a long way." And she says, "But there's still a long way to go. Like, you're not there yet." And I don't think that they were necessarily talking about the people in the yard. I think it was more or less, giving the overall narrative about where they are together. Like, you're not there yet. I don't trust you yet. You have a long way to go to earn my respect back or my trust. Brienne saying that to Jamie. So I think there was more to it than just the two of them sitting there and chewing the fat.
Ryan, Pod's no longer just a warrior in the bedroom. It looks like he's a warrior on the battlefield as well. I mean, did you notice that his confidence, his look, even his armor has changed?
Yeah, no, Pod looked like a proper knight, certainly confident, and I guess it shows. I mean, he was so desperate to learn under Brienne way back, so he's clearly been training, and he's clearly doing well, as Jamie noticed. And just to go back to the other question, I think part of their thing is that they have so much in common. Like, if you look at Brienne and Jamie, like they stuff that they shared, like they shared trauma together, Brienne, both of them being captured, Jamie losing his hand, losing who he was. Like, everything he was lost when he lost his hand, and Brienne almost getting raped and being helpless for probably one of the few times in her life. And they're both kind of outcasts. They both kind of suffered from kind of forbidden love. Brienne for Renly, the king who was both a king and gay, so she can never get. And obviously Jamie with his sister. They're both people who people talk behind their back. So I think they just share so much in common that I think there is really a chemistry there and a shared kind of a mutual kind of understanding that they have. And I think the difference now is that maybe Jamie feels bad for how much she kind of was riding on her, but then I guess for her also, it's like, why aren't you doing this? Something's different. What's wrong with you? So I really liked that scene, and you can almost tell how, like, I don't want to say Jamie's broken, but he's certainly kind of come to grips with who he was and seems kind of genuinely wants to change and become a better person.
Dany and Sansa covered a lot of ground, including the rivalry, what troubles them about each other, and the fact that she's there because she loves Jon Snow. But, IG, the membership to the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is abruptly halted when that pesky question comes up, what about after? What about the North? They answered our question from last week. Can they get along? Yes, for short periods of time. What kind of queen is Dany going to make if she refuses to compromise and switches right to resting Dracarys face every time she hears something that she doesn't agree with?
And why doesn't she agree with it? Okay, they're kind of fighting together right now, but why, if you become Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, can't you be Queen of the Six Kingdoms and let the North just be part of your group, but not part of the group, right? You don't rule them. They're just there, but they're an ally. I mean, that has existed everywhere in time. And understandably, this is not our world, and I get that. But still, let them just be on their own. Let them not have to bend the knee. The North can live on their own, especially since they're willing to work with you. They're the only ones that have shown that they are absolutely, without a doubt, willing to work with you. Let them have their independence. Let them be free. Let them be like the people that came from north of the wall, actual free folk. And I think that's where Daenerys is missing, because she did seriously just go right into like backing up and resting bitch face and everything else, because like I'm done with this, because why should you be free? I'm going to be the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. The North is in the Seven Kingdoms. Why don't you just do what I want you to do? And to be a good and just ruler, sometimes letting people go and letting people live their lives is just the way you need to do it.
Dany did pull her hand away faster than a Tinder date that found out that you weren't picking up the tab for her. Kim, is this all or nothing? I mean, is there a compromise that these two can find?
No, and like I said last week, both of them are, very much type A personalities. I don't think that they're really ever going to peacefully coexist for very long, like you said. It's all or nothing for Dany. I think that she's in it. She's been very clear about what her mission is and what her goal is. I'm here because I'm going after the Iron Throne. It's all I've ever known. Nothing is going to stand in my way. The more that you sit, like I rewatched the episode a couple of times, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, here's Cersei's been heard the prophecy before, and everyone's thinking that it's going to be her that's, the Mad Queen. The only thing I keep thinking is, what if it's not Cersei at all? What if she's not the one that they're actually prophesizing about? And what if it is Daenerys? And what if this is like the key, like that pivotal moment where you see that inner psychopath just come out? She's been very well mannered, I think, for the most part up until now with everyone. She's tried to play cordial, but when that interaction happened with her and Sansa and they sit down, it was like my fake radar was just going off left and right. Like, no, cat scratches. Like, that's all I'm seeing happening here. So no, I don't, it ain't going to happen. No, I think that there's going to be a battle royale between the two of them.
The two of them, if anybody on that show could really use a friend, I mean, other than Theon, those two really need a friend. A few more reunions that we didn't get to last week, like Ed and Tormund show up and get to see Jon, and Sansa gets to see Theon. But Ryan, the War Council sounded anything but promising, as the only plan seems to be, let's use Bran as bait for the Night King. I think the Titanic and the Hindenburg may have had better strategies than this. But with all this laid out, and you staring at the photo looking for the sailboat like the guy from Mallrats, does it seem like our heroes have any hope in this situation? And can we trust Theon not to go full reek when the Night King shows up?
I think Theon's past it. I think he's ready. I think he's ready to die. And, I think one benefit is, the difference from being captured by Euron and the dead is that the dead are going to kill him. They're not. I don't think they don't have an interest in torturing him. Where I think that Euron would make the rest of his waking life miserable. That being said, I think this is where a book is better off than a show, because I just think at the end of the day, they're not going to spend 30 minutes strategizing and explaining, going really deep into detail about why they're doing what they're doing. And so it's a situation on TV, and rightfully so, where they do need to kind of gloss over it. The plan does seem really sketchy. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where, we'll probably if there's something similar, which I'm sure there is in the books, I'm sure we're going to get a very lengthy chapter, if not more, on their strategy and on what the plan is and on how they're going to lure the Night King in, where, we really just get this very weird, quick, brief plan, which it relies on, okay, some Ironborn, but you mean to tell me you can't find like an Unsullied unit that are probably far more trained and organized to handle that? So, I admire kind of Theon for taking on the job, but maybe we send in some professionals to protect Bran, who's the literally the most important person in Westeros at that moment.
And I was just about to bring that point up. Bran is arguably the most important person in Westeros, and we're leaving Theon Greyjoy to guard him. IG, were you surprised at Theon's reception back at Winterfell after the last time he was there? It didn't work out so well. He was a captive of Ramsay. He saved Sansa, but he got a hug rather than a kick in the nuts, which would be virtually impossible. Do you trust him to guard Bran?
Well, I think that everything he's gone through and everything that he's done and had done to him, he's a changed person, and he's not going it alone. I mean, he is bringing the Ironborn with him, and the Ironborn are a bunch of no fucks given warriors. They are really in it to win it. And, what is dead may never die breathes true in the Ironborn. They will go to no end to win whatever battle they're in. So I think it's a decent choice. And Theon really wants to make amends. He realizes what he did. He realizes where he was wrong. And the fact that he left relative safety of his sister and going back to the Iron Islands to go up north and fight, and really just immediately volunteers, I will go there and protect him, means that he's there to get this done. And if he dies, so be it. But he's going to die in a way that is protecting the house that raised him. He learned everything he is, everything about being a man, everything about being anything in this universe from the Starks, and this is his chance for true redemption. And I think I love how they put that up. I love how they put that out in front of everybody. It was just amazing. And Alfie Allen acted his balls off in that scene. So yeah, he really did very well, and I was really impressed with it. And I think absolutely he is a good choice, because you don't have Khal Drogo. This is going to be the next best option.
You're right. He was a prisoner there. He spent most of his time there. He spent all that time with Sansa trying to escape, the devastation and the abuse and everything that they had received. And he had made a comment at one point in the past. I don't remember what episode it was, but I would have taken you all the way to the wall. I would have died to get you there. And then Sansa says, "So where will you go from here?" And he said, "Home." And I don't think he ever really truly felt like the Iron Islands was his home. I don't think that. I think that when he made that return, it just wasn't his place anymore. I think he always kind of felt like there was more of a longing to get back, to Winterfell and to be near the Starks. I think that he feels he owes them a huge debt of gratitude, and that's why he was so quick to stick up for Bran and say, you know what, if we're going to put this guy who is unarguably the most important character right now in this plot line, and we're going to stick him out in the middle of the woods, just bare open, then I need to be there. I know it's a suicide mission, basically, but I'm willing to put my life on the line that quick. Like, I think that was an obvious thing for him to do, because he feels that allegiance to them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I hated Theon from jump. All season 1, I hated Theon. And then in the later seasons, he gave me a reason to hate him. And then after everything he's been through and seeing Sansa's reaction, I couldn't be happier to see that guy get a hug. He needs a hug more than anybody in this whole story, because even when he saved his sister, he didn't get a thank you. He didn't get a hug. He got headbutted for his troubles. So probably the last contact he had with somebody is probably a prostitute that he paid. It was nice to see Theon get a little bit of love back. And in return, I hope that the show gives him a heroic end, because he definitely deserves it for everything he's been through. Speaking of Theon, this journey of fire and ice has been one of transformation. Sam, a coward to a slayer of White Walkers. Tyrion, a drunken whoremonger to a hand of the Queen. Bran, a climbing enthusiast to the Three-Eye Raven. Kim, in this story of change, whose journey has impacted you personally the most?
Would actually be Sansa. I think that in the beginning she was very passive, very meek, and I think over the course of the last 8 seasons, she's become somewhat of a powerhouse. She knows when to kind of keep her mouth shut, and she knows how to play her hand well. I think she's learning really quick, and like she said in the last episode, I might be a slow learner, but I do learn. And I think she's really kind of blossomed into somebody who, if given the opportunity, would probably make an excellent ruler.
Sansa's weird too, because she's like a sponge. She takes little bits from everybody that she encounters. Like the ruthlessness of Cersei, she understands the mindset. Littlefinger, her parents. So she is kind of the ultimate sponge as far as a jack of all trades, and she uses those tools very well.
She mirror and matches well.
IG, they call me Giant's Bane. You want to know why? Tormund weaves a tale of conquest, killing a giant at 10 years old and nursing from the giant's wife for 3 months. If you were single and you were at a bar, would you try this approach with the ladies? And shouldn't his nickname be Mother Sucker Jones?
If you were able to pull that off and then guzzle down a big horn of whatever the hell he was drinking and spill half of it on your beard while keeping a straight face, if that doesn't get you a date that night, that woman is dead. Like, dead in her soul. Because I'm sorry, like, that was just utterly amazing. Just the pure ballsiness of that alone would be enough to just get you at least a phone number or something. It's gonna work. I'm sorry. Anybody that says differently, you need someone to do that to you. You need to put yourself in that position, because that was so impressive. That was amazing. I killed a giant when I was 10, and then I suckled for 3 days at his wife. thought it was one of her kids. That was so cool. And then he just had that horn and just drank. Tormund is like one of my favorite not mainline characters, you know? I mean, he ends up back there at Winterfell and basically says we're all going to die there. They'll be here before the next sunrise. And hey, is the big woman still here? How can you not love him? He is the lovable idiot if there ever was one. He's the best. And that story, I'm sorry, would work on anyone. If he wants a date, tell that story. You got a date. That's going to work.
I love it as well because it wasn't part of the storyline, and they made it because of his acting and the expressions he was making at the actress when he was kind of giving her the side eye, and it caught on the internet and suddenly becomes like an underlying storyline and probably was pretty important to this episode. Ryan, are you buying his tale of heroicism, or do you think he was just trying to get Brienne's attention?
I mean, who cares? It's such a great story. It's kind of like him in The Bear. Like, who knows? I think he just tells these amazing tales. And I think, he's one of the guys that, like, you all have that friend that just tells the wildest stories and 90% don't believe them. Maybe there's a hint of truth, but he's such a good storyteller that you don't care, and that's the case with him. This is a situation of like just casting the perfect person for a role, and I think anybody else and a lot of this just never happens because they're not charismatic enough, they're not interesting enough, they don't have the looks to kind of pull it off. But he's just so funny and so hilarious, and his delivery is so on point. His facial expressions are so great that I mean, he just is perfect for that role, and I just loved every minute of that story. It was amazing. My wife's on vacation, and I can't wait to sit and it's kind of like I want to sit and watch her react to Tormund telling that story because it's just such a great story. So I'm like looking forward to next week, just sitting and watching her react to Tormund.
If you're gonna chug a whole horn of ale, Kim, do you need the beard to pull that off, where you spill half of it in your beard and kind of look at the crowd for approval?
I don't think it was ale. I also don't see him getting any Got Milk endorsements anytime soon. But I don't think it was ale. If you look at it, it comes out white. So I think he was trying to like paint the picture of like, he was drinking milk or something. And which raises my question, like, how rotten is this stuff? If that happened when he was 10 and he's in his 30s now, that's got to be rancid. Yuck.
It may not be that milk. I mean, maybe he's got a source,
just saying, he's painting this huge picture about, him and this giantess. Yeah.
There were other giants around. Maybe he's got a source. You don't know this guy. You don't know his life. That's
what he does in the morning. He gets up and
milks a giant.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in the new Ricky Gervais show where they go to a lady's house and she's making, I think it was like tapioca pudding with breast milk, and his partner is just sitting there eating it. Meanwhile, he's starting to physically get sick watching him, and that's the only thing I can think of when we talk about fermented milk. Arya finds the Hound sitting drinking alone by himself and questions him on his sudden unhound-like behavior. Ryan, am I crazy for wanting a word of kindness or friendship between these two? A smile, a high five, a hug, anything? And do you think she feels almost sorry or disappointed in him?
No, I think they both still feel affection for each other. They just will not. Neither of them could ever show it. You could just tell the way that he kind of talks to her, and he almost wants something. He almost wants something from her. It's almost like the Hound kind of wants her to show some sign of affection or say something nice. He seems so kind of submissive to her, and I think I see the same thing with her. They were a really interesting pair, and I think that pairing worked really well for a long time, and I think no matter what, like, he really did take care of her. He was trying to get a ransom, but at the end of the day, he did take care of her. He could have treated her terribly, and he didn't. And I think just the way that he interacts with people, is not doesn't have the best bedside manner, and he's not going to interact with a bratty kid all that well. But I think he does care about her, and so I think that scene, like, I read into it, that deep down they both still feel feel strong about each other. And they'll never be able to admit it. And I guess the only way they can show affection is by insulting each other. I thought that was, in a weird way, it was kind of a sweet scene that she could kind of sit down and drink with him. They both have been through hell with each other and separate, and they're back in the same spot. So I don't know that she was kind of questioning or really questioning him or his allegiance or why I think she maybe wants to know how he ended up there, but I think she trusts him, and I think that there's still something there between them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Hound comes off as the unwanted stepfather of Joe McCain-like proportions, where he just wants a little bit of thanks for everything that he's done, and he'll never receive it, but just receives hardship and terrible phone calls and texts wanting stuff from him. I hope before it's all over that they kind of get a little bit of closure, and maybe she does say thanks, but maybe that's not in Arya's wheelhouse anymore. I'm not the red woman. Take off your own bloody pants. Arya shows her little bit of crazy X side as she questions Gendry about his number, like Dante did to Veronica, just before taking care of business. Kim, you're on the internet constantly like I am. Why is it so torn over this love scene? Her character's 18, the actress is 20, but the masses can watch her kill people ad nauseum, but sex is completely out of the question.
I think maybe because she's got a very childlike face, and we've seen her since she was 8 years old on the show. And so you see somebody, and bear in mind, a lot of people are watching the show. They're just now like binge watching it for the first time, or they've forgotten and they're just now getting caught up or what have you. And so they're still seeing her as a child. I saw all the, people searching for Arya's age, immediately following that scene, almost crashed Google, and I'm like, it is what it is. It was, even when you're thinking about this, this is something that's even portrayed for a completely different time period. And, back then, I hate saying it, but girls used to get married when they were 12 and 13, and that was completely and totally acceptable, so not that I'm condoning it, but she is of age. She is of age. She just doesn't maybe look like it, like people would hope that she would.
I really didn't have a problem with the scene. I thought it was well done. I liked how Arya kind of took control of the situation, and it brought up a lot of questions like, this was your last day on Earth, how would you spend it? And she spent it losing her virginity.
If you guys remember, Robert Baratheon actually told Ned Stark down in the crypt, season 1, I believe, that we need to unite our two houses. I have a son, you have a daughter. And I think everyone always kind of thought that was going to be Sansa and Joffrey, and perhaps the uniting of the two houses is actually with Arya and him. There's all kinds of twists. There's so much crap to cover in this episode.
If you remember, though, all the way back into the early seasons when they were uniting Sansa and Joffrey, Sansa was just barely into puberty and about to have her first period. And they were already married, because as soon as she was going to begin menstrual cycle, they were going to start to breed them to have the next heir to the Seven Kingdoms. This is normal here, folks. This is what they do. So Arya's well past that point. She's, like we said, 18 in the show, 22 in real life. She's past that point. The fact that she's gone this far without having any of those things happen to her, especially with everything she's gone through in the places she's been, the fact that she wasn't raped or hadn't had anything else happen to her is amazing. And she's
considered middle-aged already.
Well, and she's doing this all on her own terms. She's making her own decision, and you have to respect that. Now, a lot of people are like, oh my God, and I think maybe the internet is full of more creeps than we all like to admit, because I think they're all like, is it okay for me to look at Maisie Williams' boobs? Stop worrying about that, guys. They've gotten away from just the gratuitous sex for no reason in most of this series now. Early on and everything, it really kind of got us hooked. Now those things happen for a reason. And I think it just shows us how strong Arya is, that she's still on her own terms in deciding that she wants to do this. And I commend her for that.
We've seen her grow up, from a young age. So I think, and we tend to, generally when we watch shows, we kind of take maybe a little bit too much ownership, or we assign too much, we connect it too much to reality. And at the end of the day, like, I guess it's similar to like seeing somebody that you knew as a young child, nude is or in a sex scene is just unsettling. And I think people just blew up that kind of unsettling feeling beyond what's necessary. I think, it's like both for its time. Even, if she was younger, it would be kind of okay for its time. But also, she's 22. It's also a little weird. Like, okay, so Gendry knew her at a young age. So again, there's all these parts that like it's just weird for us in our society. But any controversy over that is kind of dumb. And I think they did the way the scene was written was great. I mean, she was the one in charge and she took control, and nothing about that put her in a bad light. So I think that no matter how and as an actress, they kind of let her do what she wanted to do, and I think that everything played out well. And anybody that's upset about it is just being silly and ridiculous, and really, like, come on.
The character Arya works so well because she looks young and she's short, but they've been, and I don't know if there's a non-creepy way to say this, they've been hiding the fact that she's a woman now for quite some time. They've been dressing her in a way where it doesn't show that she has grown up. So I would have had a little more of a problem about it if Gendry was the aggressor in the situation, because he's obviously older than she is. But the fact that this was her choice and it was probably her last night on Earth, I get it, I understand it, and I enjoyed the scene. I thought it was well done, and I think if she's to die next episode, I thought that brought a lot of closure to the character.
I'd agree with that.
I'm no king, but if I were, I'd knight you 10 times over. Girls, in a world full of Jaimies, find a Tormund. Jaime says fuck tradition, and he takes it upon himself to anoint Brienne of Tarth, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms. IG, you're a softie like I am, and I watched this 3 times over. Did you get the feels, and do you think it meant Mordor because it was Jaime?
I'm not crying, you're crying.
I was.
I just had a little allergic reaction that caused my eyes to water up, I think, when that was going on. No, that definitely gave me the feels, and more so than anything else because it was Jaime, because they just sat there and explained, no, you just have to have a knight to knight you. And he got right up, well, let's do it then, let's go. And it was amazing, because, like, first Brienne was like, no, you can't do that, no, it's not right, no. And then she went over there and took it and became knighted. And no matter what happens, if one of the people in that room survives, just one, that story will live on forever in Westeros. And that's amazing, because, even if they say, well, women can't be knights, except for Brienne of Tarth, that's enough.
And to see her finally smile after all this time on screen, just being stern, and it was touching, and it just worked on so many different levels. And Ryan, before I get to the question that I had planned for you, you get annoyed at this shit as much as I do. Did you just kind of shake your head at the fact that we just snuck Ghost in there and it wasn't a direwolf, it was just a big white dog? Like, have we really run out of CGI budget?
Yeah, that you read my mind on that one.
I always do.
They were because I guess they got some crap for Ghost not being around for at least one season, maybe 2, and so just to sneak that dog in there, that pissed me off. It was like, just don't have the dog there. Like, why is the dog? Why is this random? Come on, like, I want real Ghost. Like, I'd rather them spend one episode where we get like full on Ghost, in action, and he dies, heroically, than this crap. That was just like annoying more than anything else. Yeah.
And we may have got a really fitting goodbye to Jorah, because he had a lot of key scenes in this episode. He went on a limb defending Tyrion, got the reunion that we asked for last week with Lady Lyanna. He also received a Valyrian sword from Sam. All the players are in place with all the weapons that they need for this fight. But Ryan, are you emotionally ready to say goodbye to some of these characters next week? And I want your predictions of 3 people who may not make it through the Battle of Winterfell.
I don't know that you're ever emotionally ready, and I think a lot of it's on them to write it in a way. And I think they did a great job this episode. I think that they really, like, the writing this episode was really strong as it's been in a really long time. And the last episode was, we got reunions, and they were kind of, they were cool and fun to see just because they were reunions. But I feel like this episode really captured the dynamic and the kind of relationships between characters, and really brought out those characters and the kind of human side to them. So you really felt like, wow, I really like Jaime. I know Jaime. I really liked, Tyrion was the different character, somebody we haven't seen in a long time. Even Tormund and Brienne and Jorah. So I think they really did an amazing job of really reminding you that these are all fully realized and really just well developed characters. And despite kind of some of the issues that the show's had, the last couple seasons, seasons, like it's as good as the show has been as far as writing these characters. And my prediction, I mean, it's so hard to predict who's going to die in the next episode, but I'm going to assume that Danny, John, and Arya survive, and Tyrion too. I think Tyrion's going to do something big. I think they survive. I would say Jorah's probably not long for this world. Sam's probably not long. I love Lyanna. She's maybe the coolest character in the show. I don't know how she's going to survive if she's really bent on fighting. So those are my three characters then right now: Lyanna, Mormont, Jorah, and Samwell.
IG, give me your list of three.
Oh, okay. So my three. I think Ed's watch is going to end, right? So his watch will be over. Ed from the Night's Watch is going to die. I think my second one, Varys. I think Varys is going to die. He's going to do something like completely un-Varys-like down in the crypts, and he's gonna bite it. He hasn't been doing much lately, so they need to give him a really cool out. And I don't see Varys living through this, so I think this is a good time for Varys to get killed. I think, honestly, it's going to be Theon. And it's going to be the first big major death of somebody that we've had the whole way through that has been a main character. I think Theon's going to die defending Bran. So those are my three. Those are the three I think that are going to go for sure next week.
I completely agree with the Theon. I think when you look back at really popular shows like this where a lot of characters are going to end up dying, it's just how the plot line is progressing. When you see people that start saying things that are almost like foreshadowing, like Tyrion talking about, if I'm going to die, it's going to be with a belly full of wine and da 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 da. And he said that in season 1. He said that, when he was captured, and then he tried to say, oh, well, if you pay this ransom, or my dad will pay this huge ransom if you bring me. Lannister always pays its debts. I honest to God, I think that he's been doing a healthy amount of foreshadowing, and I think Tyrion is probably going to go. If not this next episode, it'll definitely be in the following. I don't know at what point, if it's going to be during the battle with the White Walkers or not. Theon for sure, and I'm conflicted on if it's going to be Brienne or Jorah. I feel like both of their storylines have reached their max. I feel like for Brienne, as much as I love her as a character, and I'm so proud that she's now knighted, that was it. That was her main goal in life. I know that there's the 3 little novellas about her character that Martin has already written, but I just feel like with this particular storyline, I feel like it's kind of, that was it. That was like her big climax. It's there's nowhere else for her to go from there.
I think my 3 have to be Jaime's going to go, saving Brienne. I believe Jorah is probably done for, and anybody down in those crypts, including Gilly, is probably dead. After avoiding each other for most of their last days on Earth, Jon reveals to Daenerys who he really is, and she didn't really take it all that well. Let me get this right. A secret that no one knows except for your brother and your best friend in the world? Her reaction was less than enthusiastic. Kim, could she act against Jon to preserve her claim to the Iron Throne? And why didn't Jon just renounce right then and there as he told her who he was?
My comment earlier about her kind of being the Mad Queen, I think that right now there's a lot of chaos going on. She really didn't have time to specifically react, but I'm pretty sure if she had something sharp in her hands, it would have been impaling him. I think her lust for the throne is that strong, and I don't, as much as she usually tries to play out a game plan, or she tries to plan her next method of attack, I don't know if she's in the right frame of mind with this right now. If she thought about it, either way they go, if they did it together, they could both rule. I feel like it means more than this relationship, and I think maybe she's been playing the part of, acting. The actor is acting. It's her method, and she's doing what she needs to do in order to survive and get what she wants, but I don't think she's going to allow anything to stand in her way.
What do you think, Ryan? Do you think is it in Dany to act against Jon?
The throne is the most important thing for her. It's been basically her life's work, and she's put too much of herself to give up now. Even judging by her reaction, like it wasn't like, oh crap, you're my nephew. It was, oh wow, you have a greater claim than me. What are you going to do? You know, that was kind of her reaction. And it wasn't sympathetic. It wasn't, there was nothing about, it was like adversarial. So that's her default. And yeah, I think that if she sees him as a threat, then I don't see her relinquishing her claim to the throne. And I think, you know, obviously they were kind of saved by the bell from having to deal with it in that moment. I was a little surprised that Jon didn't relinquish his own claim, but you know, at the same time, maybe he has some inklings that she's not fit to rule. And so maybe, you know, from his perspective, he wanted to see how she'd react, and, you know, before kind of showing his hand. And, you know, she didn't react all that well, you know, so, you know, it'll be interesting because, you know, I think that'll be the big question. Is she headed for some kind of a heel turn? And then how does that work? You know, what happens to Cersei? Because, you know, it's not like we're getting like a kind of double switch where Cersei becomes a good guy. Like, you know, Cersei's bad, but does Daenerys go full Mad Queen? Does she not? I think that's what's making the next few episodes really interesting is, you know, this whole dynamic now, because we really don't know who we're going to be rooting for, who we're not. And so in addition to kind of the Night King, you know, coming to wreck everything, we also have to wonder what Daenerys' psyche is and how she's going to react to all the information that she's kind of been given.
She is scary, determined, and very uncompromising, and we could be looking at a Hollywood Hogan-like heel turn as she comes in and drops the leg on Jon Snow. Anything's possible. She could load up the dragons with the people she cares about, and it's later bitches. We don't know where this is headed, but we do know that winter is here. Death is come to Winterfell. IG, your thoughts on the final scene, the episode, and your rating.
So the final scene, seeing that they're lining up the captains of the White Walkers, and they are here, and they're here in force. Can you ever really be ready for that? I don't think so. I think that this is going to be a battle with quite a few casualties, more so than the Battle of the Bastards, and it's really going to be heartbreaking to a lot of us, because now we've gone 2 episodes of the final 6 with no one important dying. That means they're really going to start packing them in here, guys, and we're all going to be pissed come next week. We're all going to need therapy. We're all going to need hugs. So everybody get ready, because we're going to need each other. This was a great episode. Last week was a good episode that I thought was great. This was a great episode. A lot of really important things happening without really much happening. It really just further developed characters that we all loved and that we've all grown attached to. And it's going to make it that much harder to say goodbye to them, even if they don't die, because we've only got 4 episodes left. This is what we're boiling down to. I really enjoyed the episode. The last scene really kind of got me pumped, and I knew they were going to leave it there, but I was still upset that they did. I was like, can't we just have the next episode right now? Because I need it. I need something, but I can wait till Sunday. I'm hoping Avengers Endgame doesn't break my heart too, because that'll be too much heartbreak in one weekend. But I think we're going to be okay, folks. This episode, so good, 9.5 from me, and that's because I'm saving room for the 10s to come.
This episode makes me want to go back and retroactively change last week's episode to a lower score, because you see in this episode what they're capable of. And I was kind of, last week, I thought it was a good episode, but by Game of Thrones standards, it was fairly mediocre. And on one hand, we talked about it a little bit in chat, and Ig, you just mentioned it, like not a lot happened, not much happened that really moved the plot forward. Really very little happened that really moved the plot forward, but the writing was so strong in this episode. The character moments were so good. The dialogue was so good. The scene where they were by the fire was amazing. I could have sat and watched 8 hours just of that. There were the scene with Brienne. The show alternated me laughing out loud by myself, laughing out loud by myself and getting the feels constantly throughout, more than almost any other episode. To me, this is right up there with all of the best episodes in the show. It was really, really good. I think when we rate the best shows, I think, you think of like Hard Home and the Battle of Blackwater and Battle of the Bastards. We kind of think of those big spectacle episodes. And I've said for a while, like, I think what the writers do great is spectacle, but I think they really kind of got their mojo back when it comes to the nuance and comes to writing the characters and really, giving their actors, all these great actors, really meat to chew on. And I think, again, this is up there with some of the best episodes. So I'm going to give it a 9.5. Really, again, one of my favorite episodes of the show. And, it really makes me excited. The sense of, while it was kind of a happy episode, there was that sense of foreboding throughout. And so you really feel like, shit's going to go down next week and it's going to be a rough week between Endgame and Game of Thrones. You're going to be a really rough weekend. All might be suffering from some PTSD, maybe need some therapy. But 9.5 is my rating for this episode.
Might want to start doubling up on all y'all's antidepressants now. I don't think that the Night King is coming to Winterfell. I think there's an alternate plan. I saw and I was even conversing with a woman named Addie Lentz who had messaged me about what her theories were on Facebook. And we both noticed that in the last scene, whereas in every other episode, when they pan to the Night King and him arriving in some city, he's not there. You don't hear the dragon. You don't hear the flapping of the wings. You don't see the Night King in the lineup of everyone coming through the procession, as they're staring down the city. And I think that he's going to probably divide and conquer, and they're not going to expect it. And I think that's what's going to lead to a lot more casualties. Honest to God, I think this was probably my favorite episode of the entire series so far. It's a 10 for me. I absolutely loved it. There was so much that happened and so many wonderful, tie-ins and tie-ups for loose ends for certain characters. And, last week was the calm before the storm, and this was like that last little bit of happiness and peace I think that a lot of people had. They were finally getting their closure before we go into this uber traumatic death sequence. And that's really what it's going to boil down to. I just absolutely love this episode. It was fabulous.
I agree. I was just filled with dread on that last episode when they pulled up outside like some sort of freaky Uber driver, just standing there silently waiting to attack. If last week's episode, by the way, Ryan, you gave last week's like a 7.5. You can't retroactively knock it down any lower than that. But
I can give it a 7. I think it deserves a 7, considering what they're capable of.
If last week's episode was reunions and hellos, I think this episode was goodbyes. A lot of people were seeing each other for the last time. It kind of filled me with dread. Night of the Seven Kingdoms was everything I love about this show. Not only has the story of Game of Thrones been amazing, but I absolutely love every one of these characters. And I'll admit, I'm not ready to lose any of them. When it comes to these people, I don't want to see any of them die. And as far as Walking Dead fans saying that Game of Thrones isn't as good as that, this is going to make Negan look like Big Bird, and this is going to make the Pike scene look like Sesame Street. From Jon to Dany to Davos to my man Tyrion and Arya, this episode highlighted everything that I love about the show and how much I love these people and how much they mean to us. And they lifted us up in this episode, reminding us why we love them. And they're just going to drop us from Empire State Building heights directly on our heads. For once, going into a show, there are no spoilers. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I'm excited. I'm scared. And don't get me started on Sir Brienne of Tarth. I've watched the episode 3 times and I get the feels every single time. I give this episode a 10. It's definitely in my top 10, if not top 5 episodes of all time.
And that's it for this episode of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrihe. We had a great time bringing you this week's show. Please send all your comments, questions, concerns, and any crazy news stories from your neck of the woods to CinicRadio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CinicRadio.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CinicRadio. And find us on Twitter at CinicRadio. Continue to like, listen, subscribe, and share this with all your friends and family. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinicRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.